are joining our CalHOPE team that I am blessed to be a part of, and Randal is blessed to be a part of, and we're part of NAMI, the Greater Los Angeles County chapter. So some of the guidelines, just so you know, as we get underway, of course, I did let you know that this is being recorded. So it is totally up to you. We would love to see your face, but if you're more comfortable with camera off, that's okay too. No pressure. This is 100% a safe, respectful, and confidential space. So we want to make sure we're honoring that with all of our participants tonight. We would like to ask you to stay on mute to help eliminate the background noise or any distractions. If you have any questions, we will be having a question and answer session towards the end. So feel free to drop your questions in the chat throughout our discussion, and we will make sure to address those at the end of our call. I put on here that we recommend speaker view, but we're actually going to go ahead and highlight Dr. Judy when she starts speaking, so you won't really have to do that. And I do want to ask, because we do have it available, do any of you need Spanish translation? If you do, please either drop it in the chat to Randal, who is our co-host. You could drop it in the chat to me. You could even just use the emoji of raising your hand and let me know if you need Spanish translation. So just give you guys a minute. Let us know. Okay, I don't see anybody. Randal, if you want to just double check the chat. I think we're good.
Yeah,
I will. Okay. If for some reason we get into the webinar and you decide that you want to have that Spanish translation, please just send me a message in the chat and I will be sure to get that set up with you and our translator. So who is NAMI? We don't need that. We already talked about it. So NAMI is actually a nationwide organization. We come to you from the Greater Los Angeles chapter. We are, of course, located in Los Angeles County, and we are an organization that supports mental health for those that are affected and the community. So family, friends, colleagues, anybody who might touch the life of somebody who's struggling. We advocate, we educate, we support, and we really emphasize that mental illness is treatable and that people do live fulfilling lives. I really encourage you to check us out a little bit more at our website, which is NAMI, NAMIGLAC.org. So just NAMIGLAC.org. I encourage you to go just check out the different programs we offer. We have incredible support groups and educational classes that are all free to our community. So if you're not familiar, definitely get familiar. We also have a really exciting event coming up, which is our NAMI Walk for the Los Angeles County. This is our annual fundraiser. As you know, we are a nonprofit and we want to continue to bring these types of programs to our community. So we encourage you to join us on May 4th. It's going to be held at the LA Historic Park from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. And you can register at NAMIWalks.org. You can register individually. You can create a team. You could just come out and enjoy the day with us. There will be other vendors, other organizations, lots of incredible, impactful stories. And I promise you the walk isn't too hard. It's not like the marathon or anything like that. So we encourage you to come out and join us. The last thing that I want to share with all of you is something that the CalHOPE team, as you know, is putting together, right? This is our webinar series. This is the second in a 3-part series. Our next one is tomorrow evening. But we also have our big panel live event, which is next Tuesday, the 23rd. If you haven't registered, I really encourage you to do so and join us. I'll drop it in the chat, the link to register. And I know the most important part is that dinner is going to be served and we have really awesome swag bags. And you're going to come learn a little bit about what we do at the CalHOPE team and just really walk away feeling a sense of empowerment and truly a sense of hope. Thank you. I see that question. The live event is being held at the Glendale Community College from 6 to 9 p.m. And again, I will drop in the chat the link to register. So I think without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to my counterpart, Mr. Randal, and he will get us going.
Thank you so much, Dawnel. That was really, really just excellent. Your passion is always a little infectious when you speak about the great work that we do. And everyone that is with us so far, again, I'm so excited to have you. But more importantly, I'm passionate about what is going to take place tonight, which is really some positive and impactful and motivational encouragement for all of us, really. Um, we have the awesome, great, and I would say one of our stars in our time, Judy Ho, with us tonight. And just to give you a little synopsis, I remember just a couple years ago, I'm on YouTube and I'm really trying to just find that positive energy and find some sense of encouragement on my own journey, dealing with anxiety and going through my own battles throughout life. And I came across an awesome interview with who we have tonight, Judy Ho, and she was really, really getting into some significant ideas of how we can take control of our mental health, take control of our environment. And from that day, a few years ago, I got so connected with her process and the way she goes about encouraging people, I would say globally. And in the interest of time, I'm not going to talk too much about it. You have her bio that we shared. But I will say that she has written quite a few books that have touched a lot of lives. She's just come out with a new one called The New Rules of Attachment: How to Heal Your Relationships, Reparent Your Inner Child, and Secure Your Life Vision. We'll talk a little bit more about all of that later. But I do want you, if you can, for a moment, just to kind of lock into the space, get focused. Also, if you had invited others that were supposed to be here, we definitely want them to know that they should sign on as quick as they can. But we're going to enter into a phase where Dr. Judy's going to share with us insights. And these are, I would say, evidence-based insights to really understand what it is to nurture our mental health in challenging times. And we're going to allow her to just flow really the only way that she flows, which is to really speak to the heart of the matter and to really speak from an empathetic point of view to be able to really encourage all of us as we've entered into the space today. And so, again, don't want you to feel alone. You've now kind of connected with a community of people who are really peers. And what I mean by peers, we all have our lived, shared experiences, our own battles that we've dealt with, our own challenges that we overcome. As I sit here now speaking to you, I look all cute and everything looks fine and I'm smiling, but behind all of that has been a journey of having to overcome trauma, deep anxiety, depression. And guess what? It didn't happen overnight, but it was through events like this. And I definitely give credit to my faith. And tonight you're in for something that's going to allow you, wherever your journey is right now, to really get some of the necessary tools that you need to get healed as well. And so, again, I welcome all of you. I'm excited that you're here. And in the interest of time, I'm going to kind of get out of the way. And I'm going to hand the stage over to Dr. Judy Ho, who will share with us. And later on, we'll get into some questions and answers. But she's going to go through how to nurture mental well-being in challenging times. She's going to kind of go through some of the mindfulness and relaxation techniques, some behavioral techniques that we can get into, also some building of healthy habits. She's going to take us on a wonderful journey tonight. So everybody tune in, get focused. If you need to make a quick text or a quick call or a quick email to let everybody know to join in, we still have time. I would love for you to do that. But now I'd like to hand the stage over to the awesome, the wonderful, and the impactful Dr. Judy Ho. Stage is yours.
Thank you so much, Randal. So appreciate that kind introduction and also for sharing a little bit about your journey and why it's so important for us to have a community like this, to be able to learn how to be resilient, especially in the face of stress, which of course we're all going to be experiencing. So I would love for this to be as interactive as possible. As Randal mentioned, We are going to be taking questions towards the end, but I want you to participate as we're going along and use the chat. It's going to be interactive. I'm going to be asking you to be involved. So even if you're not comfortable with sharing your face on camera, please do try to also participate in the chat so that we can really be a community, especially because we have a smaller group tonight. And so I think that it helps for us to be able to really actively discuss what we're going to be talking about. So I really want us to consider this concept of resilience and mental toughness. This is this idea that we adapt well in the face of adversity, trauma, tragedies, threat, or any significant source of stress. Resilience is that ineffable quality that allows us to weather adversity and bounce back stronger than ever. And it's all about coping with difficult experiences while at the same time attaining profound personal growth. And so much of this is something that we can learn. It's a skill that we can build at any time in our lives. And it's really about understanding our own strengths, maybe understanding some of our blind spots where we might need a little bit more help, and be able to stay connected to your community. It can be this community, it can be a couple of family members and friends that you really trust, but staying connected is so important because the loneliness epidemic is real and it's getting worse. I think so much of it is that people feel ashamed about reaching out when they're stressed. Maybe they don't want to burden other people. They're worried about what people might think of them, what their thoughts might be when they ask for help. And I think that all of us should recognize that one of the most universal things about being a human being is that we need connection. So it's a big part of how we're going to be able to get through our daily stresses. And today I want to talk specifically about some strategies that you can start implementing today. So the goal really is, first of all, to really attune ourselves to a more values-based life. Oftentimes we talk about goals, bucket items, and to-do lists, but what we really need to be thinking about more is, are we living our life connected to our innate strengths, innate values, the things that are the most important to us? And it can be sometimes difficult to understand what that means. So I want to share a little bit about what it means to be connected to values. So let me see here. I was trying to share the screen and I think there we go. That's much better. Okay, so values are the sense that your lives have meaning and fulfill some larger purpose. It represents a spiritual source of satisfaction that stems from your deeper purpose and values. And this form of happiness that you derive from values isn't ruled by the law of diminishing returns. There's no meaningfulness there's no limit to how meaningful your life can be. And this is in contrast to the feel-good happiness that I think our society generally emphasizes, but it is a little short-sighted. And why is that? Well, feel-good happiness is more of a sensation-based pleasure. It's about joking, having a great meal, those first moments of vacation. Obviously, those are wonderful, but eventually that novelty fades. And this type of happiness doesn't really last longer for most people, more than a few hours at a time. So when we talk about values, this is what you want to stand for and what you want to be remembered by. Values are what gives you a sense of purpose, and they're unique to all of us. So there's thousands of different values, but even if two people in this room today said that one of their top values is integrity, they may choose to define that differently for themselves in their lives and also choose different ways to live out that integrity. And all we know about values is that you can, at any moment in your life, decide to act consistent or inconsistent with it. So instead of saying, yes, I did that 10K, or yes, I got that big project done, there's no end point to values-based living. It's really just about, how are you moving your life forward? How are you following that compass that you say is important? And whether or not you're choosing to move in value directions at any moment in your life. When we take the time to align with our values daily, we're going to have more energy, feel more fulfilled, make decisions easier, have more motivation, and generally be at a much better balanced place for mental health. So what I would like us to do is to actually do a quick exercise now to rank order your top 5 values as you're sitting here today. As I mentioned, there are thousands of values, but this is 33 of the most common values that people find that they ascribe to or that resonates with them. A lot of these words on this page are going to sound nice, but I'm going to challenge you over the next minute or two to really focus in on the 5 that are the most meaningful to you right now as you're sitting here with us. And if there's something that's not on the page but really speaks to you, obviously write that word down. There's no right or wrong answers here, but I would love to see what you guys have to share when you really try to cultivate this idea of tuning your mind right now to the 5 most important values that you see on this page or otherwise in your mind. And if you don't mind sharing them, please type out your top 5 values into the chat so that everybody else can see. Hopefully, Randal, that's an option that everybody can use, which is to actually be able to chat in a more generalized way. But if that's not a way that we can do it, we can also talk about this activity in a different manner.
Yeah, and I'll definitely share. If you drop that in the chat, me and Dawnel will definitely share that out to the public.
Awesome.
And Dr. Judy, we do have a request. Is there a way to make the image bigger? Or is that as
This is the biggest I can make it.
Okay.
It's filling my entire computer, so I'm not sure how much bigger I can make it, but is that better?
Yeah, it is actually.
Oh,
yeah.
okay, awesome.
Thank you.
Oh, well, sometimes tech works.
Yes, right.
It might, yeah. You just never know. Okay, awesome.
Again, if any of you want to drop your top 5 into the chat, we will definitely share that. We don't have to say your name. It can be anonymous. But if you'd like to share your top 5. We've got acceptance, community, integrity, self-esteem, trust, and knowledge.
Uh-oh, let's see. There we go.
And we also have adventure, spirituality, which is mine, health, imagination, and community.
We have power, sharing, caring, compassion, and loyalty.
I love that. And we have honesty, leisure, trust, caring, and adventure. That's awesome.
All right, we have another one, spirituality, talent, community, health, and authenticity.
Nice. These are great ones so far, guys. And as we start to get more, you can feel free to keep interjecting them or putting them in the chat, whichever way is the easiest for you guys to communicate it. But definitely keep considering this. And for those of you guys who are thinking, how do we get a list of these values just so that you can continue to do work in this area? You can get it for free at my website. But also if you just Google values cards, values lists, you can get other similar lists to this. So what are some ideas for values-based living now that we know what's important to you? Well, the first thing is to apply values whenever you do create a goal for yourself. So whether it's a personal or a professional goal, make sure that before you set your mind on a goal and commit to it, that it's actually linked to one of your top values. So many of us set goals because it sounds good or maybe because some of our friends are doing it. And it's not so much that those are bad reasons for why to commit to a goal, but you want to make sure that it's tethered to your top values in some way. And this is going to really help bolster your self-regulation when the going gets tough with your goal and enhance your motivation and willpower too. And most of you guys have probably heard of SMART goals somewhere in your self-development journey, but if you haven't, this is also a nice way to be able to set goals with these kinds of parameters, making it specific, measurable, assignable, realistic, and time-related. Another way, my favorite way to have my values be top of mind is my daily's values check-in. So I like to review my top 3 values either every morning or at night before I go to bed. And then I ask myself, what is something that I can do in the next 24 hours to honor this value if I haven't been doing that across the day? And if I did do something or over the day to honor that top value, then I acknowledge what it is. And I find that on some days when there's a lot of stress, where I don't get as much done on my to-do list, if I feel like I've been living in alignment with my top values, then it was still a good day and I can get some rest knowing that I still lived a meaningful day, even if everything on my to-do list was not checked off. And then the last application that I think is really practical is values-based decision-making. Oftentimes we get into a rut of, oh, which way should I go? I have 2 or 3 different options. And then you don't want to have buyer's remorse after you make a big decision. So one way to eliminate that is just ask yourself, which decision is going to honor my top values most? Really reduces a lot of emotional stress and pain when you can just lean into your values to make the bigger decisions in your life. So I want us to now talk about, now that we've been orienting a little bit to this values-based living, is to review and adopt some resilience strategies. So there's a few different things that we can do, and I kind of put them into 4 categories, and we'll talk about different ideas. I'll have you try some of them out with me here today. But essentially, it's going to be a combination of recognizing your unique stressors and signs, strengthening your relaxation response, combating negative and unhelpful thinking, and then creating a values-based self-care plan. So recognizing stress triggers and signs. It's really important for us to know the situations that create stress for us and manage it ahead of time. So something we talk about in behavioral therapy is the antecedents, behaviors, and consequences. So once something kind of sets off a series of events, what are you likely to act like? And then what are the consequences of that? And how do we change those ABCs? Now that you know what your antecedents are, how can we make your behaviors more productive and helpful, and therefore then lead to positive consequences? So one of my favorite things to do is to create if-then plans. So if-then plans are basically just as simple as they sound. It's a really quick strategy you can do anywhere, where essentially you can see your potential barriers and pitfalls ahead of time, and then you create a statement. If this happens, then I will do this. So one example is that you're trying to eat healthier, but you know that at the end of a busy workday, you're going to come home, you're going to go into your pantry, and you're going to eat a lot of those snacks that have been sitting there just waiting for you, just beckoning for you at the end of a workday. Well, one of the things that you can do is create an if-then statement to deal with that particular triggering moment. So if I come home after 8 p.m. from a long day and I'm tempted to get something from my pantry, I will make myself a cup of tea instead and cut up an orange or cut up an apple and eat that. You know, it's really about being that specific and writing it down ahead of time, because if you're waiting until after work, you're already tapped out in terms of your emotional regulation. So you're not going to make the best decisions for your health at that time. So it's important to actually commit to it by writing the statement down somewhere in your journal, on your phone, in the notes app, whatever it is, so that it's actually there, it's concrete. And then when you come upon those stressful and triggering situations, you just simply do the steps. It's almost like following a recipe when you're cooking. Also, it's important to notice physiological sensations of stress. So what I would like you guys to do is to come with me now and do a very brief version of this body scan exercise. If you would like a longer version of it, I've included a link there, and I will be happy to share this PowerPoint. Randal and Dawnel, if you guys would like to provide it to our attendees, I'm happy for them to have it so they can kind of see where this link goes. But basically, this is a great little clip. It's like a audio clip that takes you through a body scan meditation. That's a few minutes. But right now, we're going to do a really quick version of it. So what we're going to do is just focus on each body part in turn. Start with your head and go all the way down to your toe. And notice any areas of tension. And you may not notice it until you start to scan your body. So like really start to pay attention. So for example, right now, I notice that there's some tension in my shoulders and the upper part of my back. There's also a little bit of tension in the area around my calf, right? So you can notice these areas where they just feel a little tight. And you can then choose to let go of any areas of tension that you discover. One of my favorite ways to do this is progressive muscle relaxation. A really quick way of doing it is just tensing the part that you feel is already tense even more for 5 seconds, and then really letting it go after that. So we can start doing that together. Find an area in your body that is feeling tense. Tense it even more for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, and then let it all go. Make it really relaxed. Imagine yourself being as relaxed as possible in that area of tension. And you can repeat this for every single area of tension that you have. So you notice that this is something that you can do under a couple of minutes. It can basically happen anywhere. And the more you learn to use this body scan, the more you'll be able to recognize your stress triggers and to manage them better. Another way to strengthen your relaxation response is to think about sensory experiences that you enjoy. So nature, puppy videos, weighted blankets, cuddling, tea, chocolate, music, aromatherapy. These are just some ideas and examples of how to do this. Also, one of my favorites is to do mindful tasks. So sometimes people say they don't have time for mindfulness, or their mind doesn't really do well with meditations that are more traditional. And I would challenge that. I would say that you can be mindful through daily activities that you know you have to do. So this could be only focusing on the process of making coffee in the morning if you're a coffee drinker. When you're taking a shower, instead of making a to-do list in your head, just focus on the shower and how it feels physically, as opposed to trying to think about something else in your brain at the same time. Or taking a mindful walk around the neighborhood. Don't turn on the music. Don't talk to a friend on the phone. Don't be lost in your thoughts, but really take in the physical scenario around you. And for some reason, there's like a little bit of like scratch marks for some reason on the view. I'm just going to reshare my screen and see if it goes away. There we go. That's much better. Okay. Deep breathing. One of my favorite breathing techniques is box breathing. It's so simple to do, and you can do it anywhere. And just 10 of these box breaths can really set your mind and body in a totally different place. And the reason is, even when your mind is stressed, if you start to take deep breaths, your body is getting the signal that you're not in actual fight or flight. Because if you were, you wouldn't be able to take these deep breaths. And so that's why this type of deep breathing is so important. It's a great way for crisis management, distress tolerance. It's one of the simplest things to tap into. Box breathing essentially involves counting 4 and holding your breath, counting 4, inhaling, counting 4, holding your breath again, and then counting 4, exhaling. And while you're doing that, you're drawing a little box in front of your face to keep count. So we can try that together. And we're actually going to start with an inhale. So inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, exhale, 2, 3, 4, and hold, 2, 3, 4. Let's try one more. Inhale, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, exhale, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4. So you can do about 5 to 10 of those, and you'll notice a really big change in the way that you're managing whatever stress that's going on right in that moment. It'll also help you to make a more mindful decision, a better decision, and a healthier decision. A couple of other interesting meditations for people who say that meditations are not the easiest thing for them to do. Here's another example of how you can do a brief meditation by mindfully eating 1 raisin. It's actually a really simple exercise. And for those of you who say, well, I just don't have the luxury to eat a whole meal mindfully, I hear that. We're all busy. Sometimes we're maybe eating at our desk while we're doing something else, or you're just busy with other things that are going on and you just don't have the luxury of being totally mindful throughout your meal. But most of us can be mindful with the first few bites. And so this is a great script to kind of tap into that at least for those first 3 or 4 bites, you're really savoring the food, really focusing on the sensation, the taste, the smell, how you feel when you're eating it. And then for the rest of the meal, if you have to be multitasking a little bit, it's understandable, but even making it a ritual to start by mindfully eating for the first few bites. Some things that I think are really helpful for building resilience is to understand your negative and unhelpful thinking. We all do it. Our brains produce negative thinking because it's trying to protect us. It's almost like that overprotective friend or parent or mentor in your life that basically is saying, oh my gosh, please don't do that. I don't want anything bad to happen to you. But maybe they go a little overboard. And so our brains have an inclination to do this, comes from a great place, but sometimes it goes overboard and then it affects the way that we feel and our actions. So the 6 most common thought triggers or negative thought patterns that we tend to have It's discounting the positive. So only thinking about the negative and really discounting or dismissing positive things that are happening. Catastrophizing, which means that you're going automatically to the worst case scenario. Mind reading, which means that you act as if you know what somebody else might be thinking, and then you take action based on that. Shoulds, which are arbitrary rules for ourselves, always making us feel inadequate, like we're not doing enough. Black and white thinking, which means that you're going to the extremes. Either everything is all good or it's all bad. There's no in the middle. And then finally, personalization. When something bad happens, you attribute it to you. You're constantly comparing yourself to other people and thinking about how you don't measure up. So a lot of people will say to me that they have multiple of these types of thought triggers. And I think that that's very true for most people. They don't just use one of these types of thought traps. They oftentimes will see themselves using several of these and rotating through them during stressful moments. So the first thing that's important is just awareness. And the way that you can start noticing what your thought patterns are is when you notice a negative feeling or a negative action that you wish you didn't take, just ask yourself this very simple question, which is, what was I thinking just before I noticed this negative feeling or action? What was I thinking just before? Because we oftentimes don't notice our thoughts, but we notice how we feel and we notice how we act and we don't like it. But thoughts precede feelings and actions. And so I ask people to rewind the tape. Just ask yourself what you were thinking before. And by doing this a few times throughout the day, you're going to notice where your most common thought triggers are. And then based on that, you can apply a number of different strategies to deal with negative thinking. The first category of strategies is just to start questioning them. When we have a thought, we oftentimes just run with it. We think that it's true. We think that it's actually happening or going to happen. But thoughts are a mental event. They don't actually reflect reality all of the time. So it's important that you start questioning them. I ask my clients to take out a piece of paper, draw a line through the middle, and then on one side of the paper, write evidence for, and then on the other side, write evidence against, and then at the top, write down their negative thought. And then I ask them, what is the actual evidence for this negative thought and what's the evidence against? Evidence is not just more thoughts. Evidence is something that somebody else in the room could say, I saw that, I get that, that is a fact, right? So you're looking for observations. And most of the times when people break it down this way, they realize that their negative thoughts aren't just one-sided. There's two sides to the story, but that they oftentimes their brain doesn't allow them to recognize the balance. Their brains are being selective attenders. And so this exercise really concretely brings that to the fore, and then you're going to be able to have more of a balanced thought. Another way to do this is just check for what I call the other ABCs: accurate, balanced, and complete. Is this thought accurate? Is this thought balanced? Is this thought complete? And if you can say yes to all three of the ABCs, then I guess your thought isn't disproportionately negative. But most of the time people will say, yeah, at least one of those ingredients is missing, if not more. My favorite way to then modify a negative thought that you've mentioned, that you've noticed, that isn't productive, is to use the yes, but formula. So yes, recognizing something that's not going well, but recognize something that is going well or is in progress. So yes, I didn't get as much done on my to-do list as I would like, but I got two of the most important things done, and I'm going to allow myself to celebrate that, right? This is a much more realistic way of thought modification, because sometimes just going to an overly positive affirmation doesn't really work if that's not the mindset that you're in. The last way of combating negative and unhelpful thinking is to de-emphasize their impact. And this is one of my favorite exercises. It's called labeling. Essentially, it just puts a little bit more distance between yourself and the negative thought. So whatever negative thought you're having, say in front of that negative thought, I'm having the thought that. So for example, if your thought is, I'm always going to be depressed, saying, I'm having the thought that I'm always going to be depressed. Notice how that puts a little gap in between the negative thought, making it not necessarily true, and also just recognizing that it's a thought that you're having and it doesn't necessarily have to be your reality. So those are my three top strategies for combating negative and unhelpful thinking. I also wanted just to add a bit for creating a positive mindset. This is sort of preventative. How do we create that? How do we start our day in a more positive place? My favorite quick exercise when you first wake up, and you can fold this into your morning routine, is just to say out loud 3 things you're grateful for. 3 small things you're grateful for every day. Some days you're going to have bigger things to say, I'm grateful for this. Other days, they may be super tiny, but whatever the case, challenge yourself when you wake up in the morning to say 3 things that you're thankful for. I want to move in now to this area of developing self-care. So to have a comprehensive self-care plan, you should be having activities in each of these self-care areas: emotional, physical, mental, spiritual, social, and practical. One easy way that I like to break this up is I'll assign a category of self-care to each day of the week. And then on Sunday, I'll just repeat my favorite self-care activity or category from that week. So Monday could be emotional self-care, Tuesday could be physical, and so forth. On Sunday, I might take a look at my week and say, well, I really enjoyed my social self-care this week. So on Sunday, I'm going to do something else for social self-care. Self-care activities can be so simple. They can just be 5 minutes on a busy day. Obviously, when you are afforded more time, you can make them more extended, but don't be discouraged if you don't have time, because self-care is going to work and is going to be effective, even if it's only 5 minutes, as long as it's intentional and as long as you're mindful about it. So you want to be intentional. You want to be conscious that you're doing something to better your mental health. But also when you're doing it, don't be thinking about what you have to do next. Really participate in that activity fully and try to focus on that experience, because you're going to enjoy it more. And it's also going to yield the most benefit to your mental and your physical health. So here are just some examples. There are other ideas as well, but we talked a little bit about mindfulness practices, possible types of muscle relaxation. That's actually a form of emotional self-care, as well as physical self-care. Artistic and creative outlets, exploring therapeutic benefits through artistic and creative activities. This is a type of emotional self-care because art really taps into emotions for most people. And if you don't think that you're a creative person, I really challenge that, because all of us have creativity. So don't judge yourself. Try to experiment with a hobby, something that you're not 100% sure that you're going to be quote unquote good at, but just do it for fun. It doesn't have to be something that you excel at. But it could also mean watching a movie that you know is going to, help you to get in touch with your emotional side. It could be going to a museum and observing art. It can be a number of different things. It could even be putting a playlist together of your favorite songs that make you think about mental wellness and resilience. So really challenge yourself when you hear yourself saying, your negative self-talk saying, I'm not a creative person. All of us can be creative in different ways. And I challenge you to do something small every week, at least when you visit with this area of self-care, to challenge that. Mental self-care could involve cognitive behavioral therapy techniques. I shared some with you about thought modification, but mental self-care could also be doing something that's intellectual, something that really interests you, learning something new. All of that could be a form of intellectual or mental self-care. Physical exercise, of course, regular physical activity is important, but it doesn't mean that every day you have to break a sweat. It just means that you're getting in touch with your body. This could be just a few restorative yoga poses on days that you're too busy to do an actual workout. And a 5-minute walk around the block is better than no walk at all. So just make sure that you can spend some time within your own physical limitations, really being in touch with your body and using the parts that are being able to facilitate movement for you at this time without pain. Building healthy habits in general is another form of physical self-care. People sometimes forget how important it is just to drink enough water, try to get quality sleep and have good sleep hygiene, really eating nutritious foods. And when they're eating it, appreciating the food for its nutritious value. Those are all ways to enact physical self-care. And then spiritual self-care. For some people, this involves prayer. It involves reading scripture. It involves going to church. For other people, spirituality just means touching base with something that is bigger than yourself. For a lot of people, nature really brings that home. Whether you're a religious person or not, when they're in nature, just appreciating the vastness of the world and how little we are in it, and also just such a sensory experience to be in nature. So there's a lot of different ways to incorporate outdoor activities into your daily life. Like I said, those quick neighborhood walks is one way. Exploring a park, exploring a botanical garden, just really making it a part of your weekly routine to make sure you touch base with nature at some point. So one of the things that I want you guys to think about as we close, we're going to be having some Q&A. is to really discuss the 6 areas of self-care with a trusted person in your life. In this discussion, I want you guys to talk about, well, which of these 6 areas need the most attention right now? And where are you already doing well? Maybe where are you already doing those self-care activities in a very consistent way? And then I think it's important to think about everybody's self-care plan being slightly different. It's going to be different based on your personality type and interests, your top values, and it's also going to depend on how much time you have every day to experience self-care. So I have a template for a self-care plan that you guys can use, but I think also it's important to identify any barriers that could come up when you're thinking about putting your self-care in action. Are you going to make an excuse and say, well, I'm too tired to do something today? Are you going to put it at the end of the day and then run out of energy to do it? If that's the case, maybe your self-care should be a few minutes in the morning as part of your morning routine. But thinking about these barriers ahead of time is going to be really important to building daily resilience. So this is my plan for self-care planning. I would love you guys to take a look at this, at least brainstorm 2 or 3 activities in each column for the 6 different types of self-care. And then I challenge you to do at least one of those activities and then rate how much you enjoy it. 5 being the most enjoyable and 1 being the least enjoyable. If something is a 2 or a 1, you should just take it off your list, right? Again, everyone is different. So you don't have to fit a round peg in a square hole. If it doesn't work for you, chuck it out, replace it with a different idea, try that out, and only keep things that are 3 and above so that you're maximizing the enjoyment and the meaningfulness of your self-care. And think about the values that you have too, because that's going to give you some thoughts and ideas and guidelines for the kinds of activities you might want to put on the page. So if you keep your values top of mind and you think a little bit about your interests, your personality traits, how much time you have, I feel really confident that using something this structured, you're going to be able to enact a self-care strategy that you can use daily and won't feel overwhelming. All right. So any questions based on our discussion today?
Well, Dr. Judy, I'll jump in and just, what hit home so quickly, and those of you that do have a question or comment, just drop it in the chat and I'll send it over to Dr. Judy. But defining your value system first, like what is that in your life, whatever that is. And in my view, doctor, is being non-negotiable about that value system. This is a system by which it doesn't matter how the wind is blowing or how people feel. This is what is important to me, and I'm going to define that. But then as you're speaking, being proactive about actually putting that into action. So it's not just my value system, because for me, my value system begins with my faith. It begins with controlling my environment. I don't know if everybody out there feels that way. And so what I mean by that is I'm always trying to keep a positive environment no matter what. That is my value system. I don't like negative energy around me. That's my trigger. So people that tend to complain a lot or tend to err toward the negative, I tend to, run away from that. But you have to be proactive about what that value system is in your life, is what I received from you tonight. That you can't just leave it to chance. You can't just kind of go about your day and just hope everything's going to be okay. There is some practicality. You got to really put that effort in, whatever that looks like to you, to practice self-care and to ensure that your value system is actually being implemented in your life. So that really hit home to me. And I think I'm going to go over to Dawnel real quick. But if you have any questions or comments, please drop it in the chat so we can share it and be able to get your questions answered. But go ahead, Dawnel.
Awesome. I actually have 2 in the chat. So if we can just address each of them separately.
Awesome.
The first one is, I feel that so much of mental illness is because we put immense pressure on ourselves to be perfect and strive for perfectionism. Then we get pushed so hard that our brain cracks open and mental illness or struggles result. How can we avoid this tendency in so many young adults?
Yeah, this has to do with that negative self-talk category of shoulds. That should have, I should be more perfect. I should be better. there was an old joke, I forget who said this first, but I do joke around with my patients, like, you have to stop shitting all over yourself, because that's what we do to ourselves. There's all these limits and things that we put on ourselves, and the bar keeps moving, so you can never meet it. I think that the answer to that is self-compassion. Self-compassion is one of the most difficult things to do. It sounds like an awesome idea. You guys have probably heard about it. But in practicality, I think most people have a hard time really being kind to themselves. And maybe it's because they think that if they're harsh to themselves, they'll motivate themselves better. Or maybe there's a small part of them that doesn't think that they deserve good things, or has low self-worth and low self-esteem. All of those things can create lack of self-compassion. So I think it's really important to focus on self-compassionate activities. One of my favorite things to do is the loving kindness meditation. The loving kindness meditation is something that you can do in just a few minutes. Essentially, it involves spending a little bit of time reflecting on somebody you care about, sending love and kindness and well wishes for them, and then spending some time thinking about someone you're in conflict with, and then still wishing them well and success. And then finally, wishing that kindness on yourself. And so the loving kindness meditation is really easy to search for. It's really easy to find online. I have a loving kindness meditation on my YouTube channel, on my Instagram. So you guys can use that if you want. But if you just search for loving kindness meditation on Google, you'll find a lot of other scripts as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much. The next question is, how do you say to someone who uses pet names around me, especially when my foster parents used it and it triggers my PTSD?
Yeah, hopefully the person that you're in relationship with will understand that that is a trigger for you, and that maybe they mean it in jest, maybe they don't mean anything by it, but no matter what, that is your trigger. And so much of it is really being able to communicate that very clearly and being clear about what you're asking for the person to do. Sometimes we communicate something halfway, but then we don't communicate it all the way. Or when we're communicating it, we're already feeling triggered. So it's maybe not the most complete sentence that actually came out. You're already upset. So it's like this partial communication, and you're kind of upset about it, and then they feel defensive, and then it's not a productive conversation. So I find that it's really important to follow a couple of strategies when you're trying to communicate something about your triggers. Keep it on you. Don't make it so much about their behaviors and what that means. Sometimes we'll say, well, when you do this, it feels considerate. It feels like the right thing to say. It feels like it's the truth, but it's actually just more important to keep it on how you feel first and foremost. So, when you use that pet name, it makes me feel this way, fill in the blank. You're only going to acknowledge that they did something, but you're not going to acknowledge the intention behind it, because you don't know what they're thinking, right? So all you're going to say is, when you use this pet name, it makes me feel this way, as opposed to, when you use this pet name, I know you're doing this, or I know you're being disrespectful. It's just, when you do this, I feel this way. That's kind of the first part of the formula. And then from now on, make a direct request. Please refrain from using this name, even if it's a joke, right? Ask them directly for it. And then the third step is just to show gratitude. Thank you for considering this request. Thank you for knowing how important this is to me. That's just really a 3-step way to creating a really clear line of communication and requesting something in a direct way, so that the person knows, 1, what you want them to do, but 2, how they're making you feel, and then 3, that you appreciate them for trying to do something different.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Any other questions, Dawnel?
I don't have any over on this side.
Okay. I am, and I try to speak for the group. This was so exceptional, Dr. Judy Ho. Your expression, the way you kind of took us through what we need to do practically. And again, everyone, if I would throw anything into this wonderful presentation, is how proactive you have to be if you want to ensure that you're nurturing your mental health. There is some proactiveness that's going to be involved. I know for me, one of the greatest scriptures, and I'll share it with you, it says faith without works is dead, which is interesting because we're supposed to believe in faith. But if we don't put in the work, that scripture says that faith is dead. So there's things we got to do every day to make sure that we are, nurturing our mental health. Go ahead, Donna.
Sorry, we have another question that came in. No, we want to make sure we get all the time with you. How can we engender self-compassion in our children?
Yeah, great question. I think that one of the most direct routes is to demonstrate how you're doing that for yourself. And that doesn't mean that your own self-compassion journey is complete or perfect. As we talked about, there's no perfect, right? And we shouldn't strive for that. But it's more about inviting your children into the process when you're showing self-compassion to yourself. And also communicating things that you might be struggling with, letting them know that that's a normal human experience because they're allowed to have experiences and emotions and negative ones too. But then letting them know that you're working on it. This idea of empowerment of, yeah, but I'm working on it, right? So an example of, hey, mommy had a very, very bad day at work. She's feeling very stressed out, but that's not your fault. I'm trying to find a way to feel better. So don't worry, I'm working on it, right? Even something as simple as that, just sharing with them a little bit of what you're going through, but also not making it their responsibility. And then showing that you can be kind to yourself when you're having a difficult time. Or, mommy had a very difficult week this week. So this weekend, I want to do something fun. Would you like to do something fun with me, right? These really simple ways of showing how you can provide for your inner child and be kind. And then when you notice that they're using negative self-talk, when they're beating themselves up, it's a great time then to say, hey, we all go through this. That daddy just went through this last week. So let's brainstorm some ways to make you feel better about the situation. Let's talk about it, right? Just keeping an open dialogue, showing them that you're a work in progress for self-compassion, and then even doing the loving kindness meditation with them. I really recommend this as a family activity because you can then nominate who you want to send loving kindness to. Of course, you'll always end up sending it to yourself, to the members of the family. But before that, who do we want to bring into this? It's almost like a form of prayer, a group meditation, a send-off for the people you care about, as well as the people that you're having difficulty with.
Awesome. So now we got another one?
We do. One more, because I know we're at the top of the hour. And they said, thank you so much for this. They want to know how to communicate in a positive way without being negative.
Yeah, it can be hard. Again, our brains do trend toward the negative, especially when we're stressed. So I think if you just hold the moment of gratitude for the person, even if in the moment you're not necessarily feeling grateful for them or for this interaction, really challenge yourself and say, what's one small thing that I can acknowledge about this person that is bringing positivity to my life, or something that I do appreciate about them, even if it makes things difficult. One of my best friends is somebody who always kind of sees the more negative side of things, but I still appreciate that about her because it's a different worldview and it's something that is valid for her, right? So even if it's difficult sometimes to manage that and to sometimes feel like, oh, she's always thinking about the more pessimistic piece, but really understanding that, well, this is a different worldview to entertain, and even being able to recognize that during moments of adversity. So I just challenge you in terms of trying to create more positive communication. Before you open your mouth, start with thinking about one thing that you appreciate about that person or about their action, and it's going to help you to have a more compassionate dialogue with them.
Awesome. I think that's all we got time for. Dr. Judy, listen, it's nothing but hand claps. We're so grateful to have had you tonight. And to everyone, before we close, definitely take the opportunity to follow Dr. Judy Ho. I would say get over to that Instagram at Dr. Judy Ho, but also go on Amazon. If you put in her name, Judy Ho, I got her latest book right here, and I'm working my way through it. But this is her latest, but she has so many awesome books that's out. Please go have a look at them. And again, everyone, if you're gonna take anything from today, I'm gonna push you. I'm gonna encourage you to be proactive about your mental health. Be on the push for it. Don't just leave it to chance. But everything we learned today, I hope that you'll be able to implement it. And thank you so much for coming out. I want to wish you all a great, great night. I know it's kind of late on the East Coast for some. We got some East Coast folks in here. Have a great night, everyone. And remember, your mental health is so important. Be proactive about it. Have a good night, everybody. Bye-bye.